Hi, everybody. My name is Jason.
I'm Caden. I'm Jaden.
I'm Nicole.
I'm Eli.
And we are the YHWH and the Torah channel. We thank you guys very, very much for hanging out with us. And we had yesterday's lesson that was on YouTube, and we spoke just a little bit too much truth, and they kicked us off for medical misinformation. So that is actually over on 153news.net. Yesterday is Luke 14 or Luke 15.
16.
Luke 16. I'm way off. But we are actually going to go over this again because we have a very wise old owl who we call Brother Glen, and he takes his very precious time that he has and will type up very long things and help us out through a lot of this. Now, yesterday when we did this, I didn't have answers for a lot of this stuff. And let's go into, first of all, our calendar. It is the
9th month.
It is the 9th month on our Creator's calendar. It is the bath day for the dogs. That means we are on a Thursday. And it is the 14th day on his calendar. It's the 8th day of October. Or no, jeez, wow, I'm so messed up. Okay, I'll tell you guys why I'm so beat. Yesterday I went and I got beat up yesterday. And so I'm like half on... I'm half on death's door and half not on death's door. I guess this leads me to the conversation that we have. Gentlemen, how is everybody feeling? Cade, you said you didn't get hurt at all. Are you good?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Jade?
A little sore.
Little sore.
A few bumps here and there.
So the Boss Clan, not only do we read Torah together and we hug together and we give lots of kisses and lots of stuff and we have a tremendous amount of love, we also have strangulation. We are the kings of strangulation, and it doesn't sound right, but this is what we do. And a lot of people don't like violence, and we're not violent people. But I have been in MMA, I guess, nearly all my life. Some kind of martial arts of something nearly all my life. And when the kids were 2, 3, 4 years old, I was fighting, and I was in and around fighting all the time. And so I'd always come home, and I have pictures of them in fight gear and gloves and things of that nature. So they've always been in and around the mat in a house that we had in Oregon. I actually had a gym downstairs. And so for a long, long time, every single day we went downstairs and I would throw them around. They would throw each other around. And I got to train with a MMA place in Oregon called Team Quest. And it was a lot of fun. And so we are those kind of people that you would probably not want to aggravate too wildly, just because we do play around with things like that. But I will have to say I'm 45 years old. Last night I could barely walk after I got done. I'm walking with a limp now. I had kind of scratches across my eyes. I felt like I had a bloody face. We're not like putting hands on style stuff, but it's just grappling. So, gentlemen, how do you guys, you feel all right, Jade?
I mean, I think I'm decent. I don't think I'm too messed up.
It's 19-year-old versus 45-year-old. How did that work out for you?
Not well. I'm not big enough to take.
But you are big. You're 6'2" or 3". You're a big fella. You can take 45-pound dumbbells and you can curl the 45-pound dumbbells with no problem whatsoever.
It's a little problem.
It's a little problem. You have a little swinging when you do it, but I mean, for the most part, you are able to throw some iron around. So, yeah, I'm all jacked up today. Can barely move. But that is the way that you go when you play around with the boys and do things of this nature. And I believe that self-defense and knowing how to do this is very important for every male. And I think every female, if you're like 2 or 3 years old, they should be trained up in jiu-jitsu. And they should be able to snap a lock on some aggressive man that is being aggressive to them. They should be able to choke them out and put them to sleep and walk away from the incident if they need to. And if I had daughters, they would definitely be jiu-jitsu championship gals at this, simply because the women get beat up a lot in this world, and that is very, very unfortunate that big men are so evil that they do things of this nature. But if we had the women trained up in some sort of martial arts, they would at least have a chance. So that's just my viewpoints. Now, let's get into the real meat and potatoes of this whole thing. And before we get into this, I want to read. We're only going to go over a few verses quick. So let me start on this, and we will go this. Start at Lucas 16. And for everybody who didn't get yesterday's sermon, we were confused. Not we. I would say I am confused. And Brother Glen is so kind and so gentle. He's our old wise owl, but he always feels bad about writing this stuff up. Like, he's like, well, you guys are the ones teaching or something of the sort. We're not teachers. We are simply people reading with you guys. We have a book we're reading with you guys. what we're reading right now and what we're trying to document is the laws, statutes, and commandments of our Messiah's, or our Creator's Son, our Messiah. And that's all we're doing is we're documenting this. And so as we get into some of these, it is very nice to have our old wise owl, Brother Glen, and all of you guys out there who are able to add more to this, because there's a lot to it. And so we're not actually going through these chapters in a deep dive trying to get to the bottom of it, but yesterday's, I think, warranted this, as well as the time that Brother Glen put into this email that he sent. And so let's begin. And he said to his town Midian, there was a certain rich man who had a manager, and he was accused to him as wasting his possessions. So having called him, he said to him, what is this I hear about you? Give an account of your management, for you are no longer able to be manager. And the manager said within himself, what shall I do? For my master is taking the managership away from me. I am able to dig. I am able to beg. I know what I shall do, that when I am removed from the managership, they shall receive me into their houses. And calling every one of his master's debtors to him, he said to the first, how much do you owe my master? And he said, 100 measures of oil. And he said to him, take an account and sit down quickly and write 50. Then to another he said, and how much do you owe? And he said, 100 measures of wheat. And he said to him, take your account and write 80. And the master praised the unrighteous manager because he had acted shrewdly, because the sons of this age are more shrewd in their generation than the sons of light. Okay, now we are going to go over into another little thing that Brother Glen sent us right here, and let us see if we can get to the bottom of this, because as we were reading this, gentlemen, to you, does this make any sense at all?
Not really. I mean, he was like the manager, the boss was proud that the guy had taken his money.
Yeah, that he had basically, the boss was like proud that, yeah, essentially.
It's a great job, man.
Yeah, so let's figure this out. And sometimes, I hate to say this, the parables are for people that can't get it. And I think that might be us. I think these are one of these hard to understand parables that we didn't get. So let's listen to what Brother Glen had to say. Luke 16. I listened to your reading today, and with your permission, would like to give you my 2 cents on Luke 16. Absolutely, Brother Glen, you don't need my permission at all. You are a combat vet in warriorship of Scripture, and we appreciate that. First of all, remember, a parable is literally something cast alongside something else. Most people assume that YHWH HaMashiach spoke in parables to teach moral lessons. That is not true. The English word parable comes from the Greek word parabolis, which simply means comparison. Yahushua's parables were stories that were cast alongside a truth in order to illustrate that truth. His parables were teaching aids and can be thought of as an extended analogies or inspired comparisons. A common description of a parable is that it is an earthly story with a heavenly meaning. Every one of Yahushua's parables is a descriptive comparison put in the form of a brief story that points out how two entirely different things are alike. That is why Yahushua began many of his parables by saying, the kingdom of heaven is like this, or the kingdom of heaven may be compared to that. Yahushua explained that his use of parables had a twofold purpose, to reveal the truth to those who wanted to know it and to conceal the truth from those who were indifferent. The Pharisees had publicly rejected their Messiah and blasphemed the Ruach HaKodesh, Matthew 12, 22 through 32. They fulfilled Isaiah's prophecy of a hard-hearted, spiritually blind people, Isaiah 6, 9 through 10. Yahushua's response was to begin teaching in parables. Those who, like the Pharisees, had a preconceived bias against the Messiah's teachings would dismiss the parables as irrelevant nonsense. However, those who truly sought the truth would understand. One must always keep in mind the fact that parables do not depict what some unknown reality actually is. They only describe what it is like by comparing it to something that is already known. But enough about what parables are. Let us get to the meat of your reading. The great parables of the unjust steward, Luke 16, 1 through 13, and the rich man and Lazarus, Luke 16, 19 through 31. And we're only going to go through the 1 through 13 right now, are both related to the conflict with the Pharisees. True. The parable was spoken to the disciples, but it was about the Pharisees. Okay, so you guys with me on this?
Yep.
Okay. In verse 1, the rich man represents Yahuwah, and among all classes of people in that ancient world, only the hierarchy of Israel would qualify as stewards of Yahuwah's house. To them were committed the oracles of Yahuwah, Romans 3:2. They alone sat in Moses' seat, Matthew 23:2. and they only were custodial heirs of the religious economy of Israel. Objections to this view derive from a failure to understand why the rich man commended the unjust steward. Only Yahuwah has the power over men to dismiss them from life and custodianship of heavenly gifts, the very things clearly typified by the prerogatives enjoyed by this unjust steward. Furthermore, the allegation against the rich man to the effect that he was a rascal or that he endorsed the steward's dishonesty is not logically taken. Okay, so we are not being logical, it appears, trying to figure this out, right? Because we thought that this guy was just ripping his boss off. So perhaps we're blind to this certain thing. Okay. The Emperor Julian, the bitter apostate, said this parable proves YHWH a mere man and hardly a worthy man. But apostates are blind by definition and without any spiritual perception whatever. What is clearly understood why the steward was commended, all difficulties disappear. In another parable, an unjust judge bore an analogy to the Heavenly Father, Luke 18, 1-6, and Hamashiach himself likened his second coming to the thief. This comparison did not embarrass the holy apostles, for Paul used it, Peter used it, and YHWH himself repeated it from glory, Revelation 16:15. In verse 2, the accusers of the religious hierarchy were the prophets of Yahuwah, such as Ezekiel and Malachi, and finally YHWH himself. In verse 3, the steward said within himself, this was the very first commendable thing the steward did, like the prodigal son, who also said to himself that he would arise and go to the Father. This man also faced bitter, unwelcome truth about himself. He lied to the Lord and to the debtors, but he told himself the truth. Many a hapless soul today simply does not have the courage to face unwelcome truth. The lost soul will hardly admit it. The man on his deathbed speaks of what he will do when he gets well, and countless sinners tell themselves the falsehood that they are really all right, in no danger at all, or that they will turn and serve Yahuwah at some future time. This steward was no such character. He laid it on the line with himself. I cannot dig, I am ashamed to beg, nor did he question the fact that he faced eviction from the office. The day of a reckoning in view, here's the analogy of Yahuwah's summons to Israel through YHWH HaMashiach. Okay, are you guys with me? Are you guys following us?
Yeah.
Okay, give me a breakdown of what you're hearing so far.
So basically, this isn't anything to do with it, but they're prophets, and the people this is relating to everybody else, and it's not actually a manager type person. He's not actually like getting his ripped off. It's basically like the prophets and the Pharisees here.
Yeah, and I mean, as we look at it in an earthly view of this, we look at this from a financial standpoint, and we're like,
this is terrible.
This guy's an idiot. Well, number one, he should put the guy in jail. Number two,
you shouldn't be happy about losing your money.
Yeah, why would you do that? I mean, if anything, the boss should go to his own people and like give them discounts and get their money in, but that's not what happened. So we were totally off on this. Okay. This was a summons to Israel through YHWH HaMashiach. He would involve all the debtors in defrauding the Lord and then presume upon their charity when he needed it. Human gratitude for past favors is a broken reed indeed. In verse 5, the lowering of the bills is the perfect analogy of the manner in which the scribes and Pharisees lowered the standards of the righteousness as a device for keeping their hold upon the people, allowing divorce on any pretext, and by countless devices making void the law of Yahuwah. And although the scribes and Pharisees were the deceitful stewards in view here, the analogy may be extended throughout Christian history to include countless others who have marked down the gospel and perverted Yahuwah's laws. This crooked device of the unjust steward was known to Pharaoh, who proposed to Moses that Yahuwah's command to go 3 days' journey into the wilderness might be honored by going not very far away, Exodus 8:28. It is, of course, a device of Satan, and it still is being employed against the truth. YHWH commanded faith, repentance, confession, and baptism into YHWH as preconditions of salvation. But the unjust steward still offers salvation to men for faith only or confession only. Is everyone with me? You guys falling asleep?
Yeah. No,
everyone got this?
I'm reading it.
The moral requirements of Christianity are still being marked down in the matter of easy divorce for any cause, or none at all, just as the Pharisees were doing. The worship of YHWH is demanded of all who would be saved. In terms of a full 100 measures of oil or of wheat, that worship requires that men sing, pray, study Yahuwah's word, give their means to support the truth, and faithfully observe the Torah. And despite this, there are great systems of Christian religions that reduced the requirements in various particulars. It should be noted that the unjust steward moved with all possible dispatch and diligence to put his evil plan in operation. That same line that records his resolution defines also his summary action to fulfill it. He acted then and there, not putting off a single day. Furthermore, he exhibited the most efficient thoroughness in his implementation of his scheme. He called every one of his Lord's debtors. None was skipped or overlooked. Thus it is clear enough that in quite a number of the most important qualities, that unjust steward was fully entitled to commendation, not for his dishonesty, but for those qualities. And what were they? Number one, he told himself the truth. Number two, he took account of his own need, which would not diminish merely because he had lost his job, right? And what was his need?
Money,
Security, life, yeah, a job. He accurately appraised the necessity to make some provision against the future need, even as Christ himself commanded, Revelation 3:18. He used those things which he yet controlled in order to meet that inevitable future need. He acted at once with all possible speed. He acted with brilliant efficiency and thoroughness. It is in these qualities that the steward provides an example of what all men should do with reference to the eternal needs of the soul. And sadly enough, these are the things that countless millions of men will not do with reverence to those very needs. In verse 8, the Lord commended the unjust steward. All of the tedious explanations insisting that it was not YHWH, but the Lord in the parable who commended the unjust steward are completely frustrated by the fact of the Lord in the parable being a representation of Yahuwah. Certainly YHWH, who was one with the Father in all things, commended this rogue not for his dishonesty, but for his prudent handling of his worldly interests. And if YHWH had not intended this to be understood, there is no way to believe he would have spoken the parable in the first place. This unjust steward is to us an example, not in cheating his master, but as an example for our attention in spiritual things. YHWH incurred no risk whatever in using such an example. Throughout the parable and always, YHWH unconditionally condemned in every action and every word, every suggestion of fraud and dishonesty, categorically calling the steward unjust. There was no danger that YHWH hearers would interpret his words as a recommendation of dishonest methods. Verse 9, mammon of unrighteousness. This refers to wealth and all earthly treasures, but why is it called unrighteousness? It would appear that they are in error who supposes that the implication requires us to believe that wealth may not be accumulated except through dishonesty, fraud, etc. For while it is true that much wealth is thus acquired, there are countless instances of persons acquiring wealth innocently. Who's acquired wealth innocently? Abram, Yaakov.
A lot of people.
Everybody did. Yaakov got wealth accidentally. He went and stole everything of Laban's. David, Solomon ended up with all his wealth. He didn't. I don't know if he was that, but what do you guys make of this? Right here.
I get.
Is wealth righteous or is it unrighteous?
If you're blessed with wealth, there's nothing wrong with that, but there's a point where you have to remember that y'all can take that all away.
Yeah, and if you're fighting for money over anything else,
and if you're hurting people to get that money, then that's wrong.
Yeah, and if your job is to make more money and that's all you care about is making more money, then that's a problem. Okay, so here's what it is. But all wealth of this world is unrighteous, however acquired, and by this the wealth itself, not the possessor, is meant. Wealth deceives the owner into believing that it is his, number one. 2, it strongly tempts him to trust in riches. 3, in making a man depend on them for happiness, riches rob him of salvation and the glory of Yahuwah. 4, it estranges him from earthly friends. 5, it surrounds him with false friends. 6, wealth promises much and delivers nothing. 7, it is a constant hazard to his spirituality. The clear meaning here is that mammon of unrighteousness does not mean wealth unrighteously acquired, but deceitful wealth. When it shall fail is a reference to the ultimate failure of all worldly assets, which under no circumstances can ever continue any longer than the lifetime of the holder, and it is the end of life in view here, because of the Savior's reference to being received into eternal tabernacles. They may receive you. Some have viewed these friends as poor people helped during the life of one received, but this is a forced view, derived from the error of making this parable primarily in teaching on the Christian's responsibility for the proper use of his wealth. But despite the fact of such teaching being included, the parable lays special stress on making the proper spiritual preparations prerequisite to the being received into heaven. Okay, that's it. I went a little farther than I thought because I went into this, but this is the first part, and then we will go over the next part of this, I think, in the second one. Gentlemen, what do you have to say after this? Is Brother Glenn on or is Brother Glenn off?
I think so. It seems to be a pretty good explanation.
It makes more sense than
It's getting ripped off.
Yeah, this guy,
Yeah, okay,
Messiah Yahushua, thinking, commending this guy for ripping everybody off and like cheating him. So maybe we still have a little bit ways to go. But thank you very much, Brother Glenn, for this. And I think we will continue on. We'll do another one of these tomorrow, which means we will finish. So we'll start up in Luke on first day. So Luke 17 will be on first day. And we will have a Shabbat live on Shabbat. It will be 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time for anybody who wants to hang in there. We are just hanging out as a little ecclesia. And we would be happy to have you guys. And anything else you guys can think of?
I think that's it.
That's it?
We
Okay.
got a bath day today, so.
Bath day today, yeah. So we got to get busy and get to work.
If you have prayer requests, you want us to pray for you, don't forget to leave them down in the comments down below, or you can email us as well.
Yes, and don't forget, guys, we are called to have compassion on people. It doesn't matter who the people are. There's no qualification of the people. We are told to love our neighbors. We are told to forgive our brother. If our brother offends us 7 times in one day, we are told to forgive him 7 times in one day. That means the 5th or 6th time that's on that same day somebody asks for forgiveness. That means that we have to love our neighbors. We have to do what our Creator has said. If you don't love people because of the choices they made, then your father is Hasatan. And there's no place in the Shamayim for people with hardened hearts like this. And so if you think you're specialer than everybody else and that you haven't sinned or you haven't done evil or you haven't contaminated yourself, just know that all of us have. And we need to have compassion on every single person out there. When you see somebody suffering, it is your job to help them. When you see people dying, it is your job to love them. When you see people in pain, it is your job to teach them the word of our Creator and show them the truth, because the light can never be taken away and we can never, ever let the light go out. It doesn't matter if you have given up on humanity and the world. You cannot give up on the creatures of Yah if you want to be in the kingdom, because all of these people that are very sick that are out there, you could be neighbors with them in the kingdom to come. It doesn't matter. Be worried about what can kill the soul, not the body. Okay, everybody, I'm out. Have a great day.
Shalom.
Shalom.